Hi guys, it's Michelle Patterson here with Angel Souls, and as part of my Halloween video series that I'm doing, if you don't know why I came up with that, watch the witch video. I think I explained it at the beginning of that video. But as we come into Halloween season, it started to occur to me that a lot of people are going to be going to haunted houses, and I think it's pretty imperative that we talk about that. So if you are somebody who you do like to go to haunted houses, you like a good scare, again, my sister and my nephew, they're really into that stuff. I am not, even though I was an actress in a haunted house when I was a teenager, but it wasn't held at an actual like haunted spot. It was, and there was no like offensive imagery or anything like that in the vignettes. So there's a difference. If you're going to go to a haunted house, make sure you do your research. If it's a haunted house, it's just like in an old building. You know, they just hired actors to like jump out at you and scare you. And if you're into that, you want to pay the price of admission for that. God love you. I hate that stuff. I hate being scared. I hate when people jump out at me. I'd be like, ah, you know, I'd be the first one to like punch them or something, you know, accidentally, just reacting. But if you are thinking about going to a haunted house that is actually being held in a location where something happened and it actually is thought to be haunted, think twice. Okay, two popular ones are haunted prisons and haunted asylums. In both cases, I think it's safe to assume that in those environments, and I'm going to give you a little information on asylums because I happen to know quite a bit about that. But in both cases, a lot of souls, even when they were alive, were probably tormented in one way or another. We know our justice system is broken, so like, you know, somebody could have been in prison and been innocent and been tortured by the other inmates or, you know, whatever the case may be. But with asylums especially, no good, no good. So if you're going to go to a location that's actually supposed to be haunted, remember, there is such a thing as a spirit attaching themselves to you, especially if you're tormenting them and you are, you know what I'm saying? Like you're going through, you've seen these people who go through the haunted houses and they're drunk and they're taunting, you know, the spirits or whatever because they don't really believe in it and all this stuff. They're just messing with it. And then they're like, oh man, I had nightmares for weeks after that haunted house. So when that occurs and you go through it, we as humans, we are sensitive. So you might, you know, whether you want to admit it or not, you're being imprinted by some of the events that happened there. So that's one thing, you know, you're just kind of picking up on that energy. Secondly, the experience is going to get into your psyche, right? And that's part of where you're getting your nightmares from. But if they keep continuing on for weeks, you might have an attachment. And now you're going to have to do a clearing and get that attachment or get that energy out of you. This is not something to play with, and it's not nice to the souls on the other side, especially ones that might still be hanging around density, okay, who need a little help moving on. So just be aware of that. If you don't believe in ghosts and you're just sitting here for 3 minutes listening to me go on, what are you doing here? Hello, I'm an angel medium. What the heck are you doing here? But even if you don't believe in paranormal activity or what have you, if for nothing else, just out of respect for the history and out of respect for the family members who may have had somebody there, you know, don't go in there just, you know, horsing around and being ridiculous, okay, is all I'm saying. The other thing that you want to be mindful of is the social implication behind some of these haunted houses. I know. Everybody's like, oh, everybody's trying to find something to be mad about. Just hear me out. Come to your own conclusions. I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying that anybody shouldn't go to a haunted house or that you're a bad person because you like haunted houses. No, you do you, okay? But I would like you to just think about this. Years ago, I was doing research for about 2 years of my life, doing research on Pennhurst, which is in Spring City, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. Pennhurst is a very important place because it used to be an institution. It was opened in 1908. I believe it was called the Pennhurst State School and Hospital. It's well known for having a history of abusing people, especially people with intellectual disabilities and the mentally ill, okay? It was one of the most pivotal places. Now, I know you guys have seen Geraldo's, probably seen Geraldo's piece on Willowbrook in New York. But Bill Baldini was the one who broke the story for Pennhurst, and I want to say it was back in 1968. I should have checked all my research before I did this, but we're just doing a light treatment here. And in the process of researching this place and realizing what people went through in this institution, heartbreaking. I highly encourage you to go watch a piece called Suffer the Little Children. It's from the 60s. It's Bill Baldini reporting on Pennhurst and the conditions there and how people are being treated. And he even does an interview with Dr. Jesse Fear. That's actually his name, Dr. Jesse Fear. Pay attention to how he responds to the questions and the mentality around people with intellectual disabilities. I will warn you, in that piece, they do throw around the R word, okay, which now is not considered very nice to say, but that was common language back then. So just be aware of that. But essentially, people with intellectual disabilities, because I guess they made people uncomfortable in society or whatever, would get tossed away to these institutions. And at Pennhurst, there is a very popular story about, people would be like, oh, well, they pay for a dentist to come in and help these people out. They're doing fine. Because they were seen as subhuman, they were thought to not be able to feel pain. So even the dentist would come in, if they needed a tooth pulled or something, they would just go in there and yank it out and give them nothing. And this is going to make me cry. They would be writhing around in pain and screaming. And people would still go, they're not feeling anything. And that wasn't the only thing that they did without, giving them something. So just keep that in mind. I mean, people were actually tortured, and that's just in the state of, the state of Pennsylvania, this one place in Pennsylvania, and it's an institution. Asylums were even worse. Your husband could be beating you, mentally and emotionally and physically beating you, okay, or abusing you, and you might try to fight back, and he could go, she's crazy, and you could get thrown into the asylum. If you were born with anything that was considered beyond mainstream normal, you could get thrown into an asylum. If you were mentally ill, you were considered a scary psycho and you'd be thrown into the asylum. Let's just hit pause on this story for a second. The actual psychos are the ones that are running free and running everything, okay? And making sure that other people are getting put away and that all the attention is going on them, okay? So using people to scapegoat. Am I saying that people with some mental illness, wouldn't be a danger to society? Of course, there are those people. But just hang with me. So we have all these people with mental illness. If you had depression, ladies, if you had just given birth and you had postpartum depression, you could be thrown into an asylum. If you were intellectually disabled, you would be thrown into an asylum. If you were poor, if you were born, and your parents didn't want you and the orphanage couldn't take you, you would be thrown into the asylum. So you have all these people from society with varying needs under one roof with an overtaxed staff who in most cases were not qualified to be dealing with what they were dealing with. And so people were often, pushed to their limits. This is where, if you think about it too, somebody comes, even if they have a good heart and they want to work at the asylum because they want to help whoever, right? They come in and they start getting a dose of reality. They realize, I can't handle this, or they start to feel helpless or useless, and that might start to cause them some grief and some anger, and now they're lashing out. On the other side of the coin, let's go back to the institutions. A lot of times they would hire people. They had to hire orderlies that would be big enough to be able to handle some of the patients and help them out, and also to subdue them if they got out of control. So who did they end up hiring because they were so underfunded and they didn't have any money? People who otherwise wouldn't be employable anywhere else for one reason or another. And usually this was because they had some criminal background. Now, I do want to say that just because someone gets charged with a crime doesn't mean that they're evil. Again, we know that our justice system is broken. I want to make that very clear. But a lot of these people, didn't have very good intentions, and they liked having power over somebody that they saw as weaker than them. And so some horrible things happened, especially, in the asylums and specifically at the Pennhurst institution. Now, Pennhurst shut down in the 80s, if I remember correctly. And by the time I came along and started doing research, I meant to do a book on, the institution, what Pennhurst was like and the history of it. I was not anticipating, nor could I ever have seen it coming, the drama that was surrounding, the controversy that was surrounding the fact that this man bought up the property to turn it into a haunted house. It's so much drama, I'm not even going to go into it here. It's too much, and it's negative, and it was crazy. And also, I don't want to get sued. But I will say, if you want to see what I'm talking about when it comes to haunted houses and why you should be careful about where you give your money, go Google Pennhurst Asylum and watch the ad that comes up for the asylum. Now, I just watched it once. That was all I could stomach. The problem with some of these haunted houses is that they will hire actors to portray stuff that actually happened on the grounds. So if you do choose to, just brace yourself, okay? It is a haunted house advertisement. It has this driving music behind it. If you choose to go and watch it, remember the story I told you about the dentist. Remember some of the things that I told you about what would happen in asylums. And watch it and decide for yourself. I'm not going to sway you either way. From me personally, and only my personal opinion, I did not like it. I was shocked to see that this place was still open. But I also did know that I think the owners of this haunted house were trying to sort of compromise with the people who were upset in the town, who wanted to see it be turned into a museum. And I did notice that on their website, they do offer historical tours. So maybe that's their way of kind of compromising with the town. Like, we're going to keep the haunted house open, but we're also going to have this historical tour. Full disclosure, I have not met the owners. I did reach out to them and tried to get them to talk to me. They wouldn't. This was back when I was doing research. They wanted nothing to do with me. And I have not gone through the haunted house. So I have not seen for myself what it is. Back then, back when I was doing the research for it, people were complaining how, and this is all allegedly, this is all from somebody else's experience, not my own. So allegedly they were saying that people with intellectual disabilities were being portrayed as monsters, and people with mental illness were being demonized. Allegedly. I did not participate in that. I did not see it. I'm trying to be careful here because this is a trigger for me. This is a trigger for me. So let's get off Pennhurst for a second. Let's just get off because I'm gonna, like I said, gonna get triggered. Let me tell you a story about another haunted house that I did go and participate. I went through the haunted house. There was a scene. Okay, this is not Pennhurst. This was a different haunted house somewhere in Ohio. That's all we need to know. There was a scene that we came across where, there's this Frankenstein. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to do a video on Frankenstein. There's like a Frankenstein themed thing, but the person was like, this actress was laying on this hospital bed, and she was bound by these cuffs. Now, after doing research at Pennhurst, I look back on that memory and I'm like, oh my gosh, those were authentic. I've held those cuffs in my hands. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they had the authentic cuffs on her, and she was just wearing underwear and a hospital gown. Okay, so then we have this whole like mad scientist. He turns and she has like this electrode thing on her head, and he hits the switch supposedly, and then the lights start strobing. And now you have a woman who barely has anything on, writhing around on this table, okay, and screaming. So I already have a problem with that. So like, we're really, and this girl was about my age at the time. I was underage. Okay, so she was probably just a teenager, being like overly sexualized on this table, and guys were making comments and the whole bit. So that was already in poor taste, along with cuffs. Two things already working against them with this little vignette. But then the actress obviously she had like a fake blood capsule in her mouth. So as soon as he hit the switch, she bites on it and she's writhing around, this blood squirting out of her face and blah, blah, blah. And then she breaks the cuffs. Now remember, this is supposed to be like a Frankenstein thing. You would think she'd be like, coming at you like this. No. She had her head tilted. She had her hands in a certain formation. And she was imitating somebody with the motor skills of an intellectually disabled person. And she was moaning like somebody who has an intellectual disability might moan to communicate. And I wasn't the only one who kind of went, what is this? When we were all filing out and going out of the haunted house, people were going, did anybody else think that was pretty effed up? That one scene with the woman? I mean, come on. And it's common. It's common. Why? Because nobody really speaks on behalf of the people with intellectual disabilities or the mentally ill. And P.S., if you're not in the know with that, they are two separate things. Okay? Somebody who's intellectually disabled does not mean that they have a mental illness. Okay? As you can see, this is something that I care about quite a bit. So this Halloween season, when you are considering who to give your money to, please do your research on what's going to be portrayed there. How are they kind of advertising? Make the decision for yourself. I'm not going to lie. That haunted house in Pennhurst, it looked like this one woman they hired as a contortionist. I was like, that's kind of cool. Okay? Like if you guys weren't doing all the other sick scenes, in my mind, I'm calling it sick. You guys might disagree. Most people maybe don't have a problem with it. I do. But I don't know. She was all like wound, twisted up. I was like, again, that's kind of cool. but I can't get on board with the rest of it. I just can't. And given my history with Pennhurst, I mean, I did try to get on the grounds and try to get permission from the owners to come in and do research. And they ignored me. And then I figured, and somebody told me to go on to the grounds because someone might be there who could give me permission. We drove on. We were stopped by security. You would have thought I was trying to sneak on to Fort Carson or something. Weird. Again, I've never met the owners. They might be the coolest people ever. I have no idea, but I wasn't afforded the opportunity to talk to them. So just be mindful. If you do know of a haunted place in your town, leave a little gesture. Take a white flower, a white rose, a white lily, whatever the heck you want. Go and just kind of subtly lay it down somewhere. Don't make a big production out of it, right? It's not about getting attention. Don't cause any trouble, right? But, and just say a prayer for those souls and for history to not ever repeat itself. And try to educate yourself on what actually happened in asylums and in institutions and how our society's most vulnerable people have been abused and exploited. All right. So I leave you with that. Be safe this Halloween season, guys. And I love you so much. Take care.